That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
Well, hello, I'm Larry Flick. Welcome to Let's Talk Music. That's hashtag Let's Talk Music, brought to you by the fine folks at VERO, where we like to gather all of the freaks, geeks, and musicados of the world together to commune and bond and talk all things music. We have a really amazing conversation on deck for you today. We have in the co-pilot seat my very good friend, Pete Lowry Winfield of Until the Ribbon Breaks is in the co-pilot seat. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Jay Appiah, who is a brilliant producer and artist, and it's lovely to see you. What are you working on these days? What do you got going on?
Oh man, just trying to finish songs. I think that's where I'm at right now. Just trying to finish.
Very
stuff.
cool.
Yeah, I'm
very
in that
cool.
Space.
Well, it's good.
Yeah, well,
good to see you.
Good to see you too.
We have a young woman I am obsessed with. I only met her a few weeks ago, and I have a gay boy crush on her. Her name is Abi Ocia, and she's also an artist and a songwriter. And you're working on some new music as well, yes?
Yes, I have some new stuff coming out very soon, which I'm super excited about.
Wonderful,
I wouldn't say more, but I
wonderful.
kind of want to retain the mystery. So.
Okay, all right. And then we have a woman whom I have enormous respect for. She lives on my side of the musical fence. She's a journalist, she's a podcaster. Kathleen Johnston is joining us here. Hello, love.
Hello, thank you for having me.
We've gathered everybody together here to talk about something that inspired me when I joined the VERO family recently, which is a place where you can hang out and talk about music, share new music, hang out and talk with new artists, because all the people who are on this show today are also active users on VERO. And that's actually the cool thing. As someone who has devoted over 35 years of my professional life to music, to me, one of the most interesting questions you can ask a person, especially someone who's given their life and their life's work to music, is why do you listen? What makes each of you different than the average person who just flips on the radio, waits to hear their favorite song, and then when they don't hear it, they just hit that advance button to another station if they're in their car? The thing we all have in common, as different as all five of us are, is that we've really given our lives to music and we live in it on the daily, whether we're, on holiday, in the throes of creative exploration, or just trying to make a buck, right? It's the way we do it. So let's start with the basic, but let's start with Abi. When did you realize that music was more than a song on the radio?
Ooh, I think growing up in church has definitely shaped how I both experience and consume music. For me, there's nothing more cerebral and what's the word I'm looking for, magical, than being in a room full of people singing to something they believe in that's higher than them, and just being completely surrounded by that sound. And it offers this unique ability to kind of lift you out of your reality and suspend you in the air for a bit, and you kind of get this peripheral vision of what's going on around you. And I love that about music, and church has always been that for me. Worship music has always been that for me, and music from that, just secular stuff, whatever it is, always manages to just lift you up from your reality and just suspend you for a bit, and you catch a chance to breathe. You can take a picture in a song and you go back to a memory by listening to something. I think it's that for me that's so special and that's so weighty, and I can't quite understand it, but it's beautiful and I always want to revisit it. What
about you, Jay?
Yeah, I don't know. I think for me, just like music is like a soundtrack to life. So yeah, I mean, like Abi was just saying, you can listen to a song and it just takes you right back to a memory. And I think for most of our most important memories, music is somehow attached to that memory in some way, for me anyway. So yeah, it's just always been like an accompaniment to life, like music. So yeah, I guess, yeah, that would be my major connection with it.
So Pete, when I think of you, as the artist, and I say visionary, that you are. You're so multifaceted, and it's more than just grooves on a record, as we used to say in my generation. When did you start to see and hear that music was more than, when it was more than a song? Was it a visual experience? Because your music, more than almost anyone I can think of these days, is a very visual, visceral, full body, full sensory experience.
No, it's funny you should say that, because I was thinking just now, hearing Abby and Jay, is that I think slightly differently for me. I didn't discover them separately. I read, like, the name Until Ribbon Breaks comes from discovering my dad's collection of both VHSs and cassettes, and I was like, so immediately I discovered movies and music at the same time, and the name comes from that I would play them until the ribbon broke, the cassette ribbon and the VHS ribbon, because I couldn't believe that there was these things that could, but then the similarity being that could take you out of whatever your experience of life is. And that's the thing for me, and that's why I've never been able to be anything other than completely obsessed or addicted to music and movies, is because it makes life bigger and more than, and you can be, it's romantic, and you can be, you can change your surroundings by them. And I think I can't think of another thing, and I've tried them all, to do to do that, and music and movies still wins in the kind of escapism game.
Kathleen, the thing that I find so interesting, and why I'm so glad you're part of this conversation today, is you and I, we don't make music. I mean, unless you're hiding a secret record that I don't know about. We come to this differently than Abby, Jay, and Pete. And yet I know from reading your work and listening to your what you do, you have an affinity to music similar to mine, where it's just such a deep part of you. So when did that happen for you?
So hard to say, because I think, just as everyone else has said, like, that evocative side of music is true for most people. Like, music is like a deep, like, human kind of need, and something that we've been doing since, like, before the dawn of time. But for me, from a literary kind of, like, perspective, like you're saying, I think, like, what really grabbed me, like, I remember just loving the zeitgeisty stuff when I was younger. So whether that was like the Spice Girls when I was in reception, and that was like such a big deal, not just because of the songs themselves, but the whole girl power thing. It was like, mid-90s, like, it really, like, captured the time. And now I think, when I think of music, it's the same as literature, in that it's like, it's a mirror. Like, we hold the mirror up to society, and each song is like a story. And that's what I love. And that's why I think as well, music journalism is so interesting, because I love how a song actually is a bigger story. So, like, yes, it might just like have certain like sounds that like really like pull at the heartstrings, but when you like immerse yourself in like the lyrics, and you think about like what the creator might or might not have like intended for it, or like the societal or like historical conditions, cultural conditions, like, in which it has been created, I think it's almost like a little, like a snapshot, like a time capsule, like, those are like such generic words, but it's the way that this ethereal, like something that's almost untangible, can like just so completely capture something so big in just like 3 minutes. That is what's always like drawn me in.
When I learned about the power of music when I was 6 years old. My parents were hippies, and like actual hippies, long hair, torn jeans, the whole nine. And
surprised me.
And what was that?
Now you're saying that, like, I can see that. Like, I love that.
They were awesome, because they taught me about music without trying to teach me about music, because we would have in our home weekly house parties, and I was always wanting to hang out with the grown-ups, and I was the DJ, the de facto DJ. I had my stack of 45s. and which were some of mine, some of them were my parents because I was 6 years old. And I was allowed to stay awake, stay out of bed, and be with the grown-ups until they stopped dancing. So I learned really quickly the power of a great song and what a great song could do to a room full of people. I have no musical aptitude. I'm actually tone deaf. I've tried singing it and I can't because it just won't come out. But I understand what a song can do. It kind of began the journey of trying to study what it's like to see a human being connect to a song in a really primal, visceral way. And I remember the power of like a Sly and the Family Stone record, the power of a great rock and roll record, Steppenwolf, you know, all this crazy shit from like the 60s and 70s. And so that leads me to wonder from all of you, when did you see that music could get the kind of reaction that would feed you? Because it's one thing to connect to a song on a very personal, intimate level. It's another thing, whether you're a creator or whether you're like Kathleen and I, and we're kind of interpreters, studiers. It's another thing to get a response. So when did you first see or feel that response to music that came out of you? I see Pete nodding his head, so I'm going to go to you, Pete.
Yeah, it's funny because I think it's confusing for me in the sense that my parents were both professional musicians, but that made it more complicated in the sense that there was an expectation. Not that's maybe the wrong word. It was never voiced. They were never like, and you will do music, but I just mean by proxy of their being, that's what they did. That's what they talked about, those instruments in the house. I think actually I went the opposite way in that I was convinced I didn't want to do music. I felt like I wouldn't get a reaction from my parents. They wouldn't be impressed because it would just be like, yeah, music. I actually fought against wanting to do music, I think, at a young age because it didn't feel like it would mean anything to them. And that ended up not being the case.
To go a little bit deeper with you, is that why when you and I first met and I interviewed you for a show I was doing at the time on Sirius XM, for me, it was the pivotal moment in our conversation where I pulled out a passage in one of your songs and I really zeroed in on it. You were visually stunned, and then we just kind of went into it. Are you surprised when people listen to your music?
Larry, it's so early in the morning for me to do this.
Yeah.
That is an intense question right there.
My heart just like for him. Wow.
But I'm giving you insight to this is why Pete and I became friends, because he sat in the room and he was all, you see him, right? He's all swagger. He's rock and roll, baby. Look at him with the tats and the tea and all the, you know. And then, but, you know, and I wasn't trying to be, I was just like, tell me about this moment because it really took me somewhere. And I thought, oh, he doesn't think people listen to his music.
Wow.
So go on, Pete.
Again, Larry, I just don't know how you do it. I spoke to my sister who's in the UK, in London, this morning about this, in the sense that she's not in music at all. I think she really went against the expectation. But what we talked about is that in the UK, I don't know if it was like small town, you know, I'm from a small town in Wales, and I'd be interested to know from Abi and Jay if this has changed. But in the UK, it felt like to me, I only realized this when I came to the US, that humility in the US isn't what's the word? It's not like a valued, like that thing of overly modest or humble is not valued in the States.
Oh, hell no.
People don't understand when we talk down what we do. So I was always taught, whether it's by my parents or just UK like mentality, small town UK mentality, to be, if anybody asks what you do, you don't want to go like, oh yeah, I'm a musician and isn't that cool? Because people will be like, who do you think you are? Which was much more of the UK way to be. Whereas when I came to the States and tried to do that, people would be like, why are you, it was almost offensive to people that you wouldn't self-promote, and not in a bad way, just be confident about what you did or proud of what you did even. Whereas I was always felt as a kid to be proud of what you did and or talk about it, you had some kind of higher station, or it was arrogant or something like that. So when I think societally, the UK is a bit more suppressed in that way, which I only realized coming to the States. So yes, to answer your question, Larry, I've always been surprised that people listen to my music. And I think that's born out of that like thing that's taught to us, that like, thou shalt not be confident.
I know, it's a crazy thing, because it's the exact opposite in America. And I think I even said to you during that first conversation, well, if you don't think people are listening to the record, then why are you in my studio? Go, leave.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got to have some confidence and some bravado, otherwise you're going to die in this business. So Abby, I'm fascinated to hear a little bit more of your vibe on all of this, because you came up through the church. Tell me the difference between the first time you felt someone connect to you singing in church versus someone hearing you sing a non-secular song.
Yeah, for sure. It's a really, really good question. And I've never actually taken the time to consider the difference, or if there is any difference between the two. And one thing I've noticed in singing in church and creating my own music and performing it live is people love honesty. People love vulnerability. People want to see a human reflected in you, whether that be in church, in a pub somewhere, in a bar, wherever you're singing. I don't know if I've spotted a difference. I just think if you are being honest and wholly yourself, and you're able to be vulnerable and be unashamed of what you're speaking and singing of, and you're able to speak about the human experience in a way that is inclusive and that other people can see themselves in, I just think you're winning.
But Jay, I got to get you in here, because I'm dying to hear your take on all of this, because the thing that I find so compelling about you, as someone who's been a fan of your work for a very long time, is that you bring a lot of joy and pride to your music, but there's nothing stereotypical about what you do. There's nothing that toes a line, whether it be of masculinity, of race, of culture. It's very much your own road, and it's going well. But it's also a harder road, less traveled. So when you get that feedback, what's that like?
Yeah, I just find that like the more I go within myself, the more I kind of find maybe what my voice is and what I have to say, or what I feel like I want to communicate with people. And I think that's probably why it often doesn't quite seem like something else, because I'm really just trying to go in myself as much as possible and draw from like my own experiences and stuff. So yeah, when somebody tells me they like a song, I just kind of, I guess maybe I've got that humble London thing where we just go, oh, I'm just trying to sing, man, you know, or like, you know, just
how boring. How accurate. Really boring. I'm here to knock that out of all of you.
You know, when I went to LA for the first time, and when I went to New York for the first time, I was like just so surprised by how like, yeah, the bravado that was there, and people just stood behind like their art like so much more, and there was almost like an audaciousness to being an artist. And I think that's kind of important. If you're gonna put music out and share yourself, you should probably just like be a bit confident with it, you know.
You should make sure you're good though.
Yeah. First.
Oh, amen.
You know what I mean? So Kathleen, you and I come from a different angle to all of this, and I know that, you know, for me, it's in the reaction when I play a record, whether it be, you know, on the radio or at an event. It's also when I feel like I've written something that helps a vessel for the artist. Tell me about the way that you feel that you're connecting through your passion and your understanding of music.
Unless you're like a kind of tabloid journalist doing something very specific, if you're trying to engage meaningfully with people's work, be that like any kind of art form, then really all you do want to do as the writer, like you say, is to convey their message properly. Like my nightmare is like for any artist to like read a piece that I've done and like not see themselves reflected back in it at all, and or not recognize themselves. Like that is like the worst thing that could happen, because you do just want to be so true to that person, and obviously you need to have your own spin on how you might interpret it, lyrics or whatever it is, rather than trying to piece them back always to something autobiographical. But like you're saying, that can be like a dangerous kind of like road to go down. I'm trying to think, the first artist interview I ever did, I can't actually remember their name. It was like it was about 6 years ago, and it was like they were like quite, they're like I did it at a magazine in Brighton, and they were like quite like a hardcore like dance duo or something, and actually terrible time, because it was my first ever interview and I was using like it was a phoner, using someone else's phone to record it. The recording didn't work, I didn't have the transcript, I had to like call them back and ask if I could like do the interview again. It was all that kind of typical stuff. But I'm now rambling. Yeah, I think, like you say, like for me, that what I love doing like a profile piece. Like I love finding those through points from someone's work alongside like my interpretation of who I think that they are. Like I did something recently, a recent profile that I did was on Arlo Parks, and I always think those ones, like the breakthrough artist kind of profile, is a super fun one to do, because you do go like a little bit more biographical, and you're kind of trying to place them within like the broader cultural landscape at the time. But it does feel, and I'm not trying to like sound worthy, because obviously what we do is nowhere near as kind of brave or creative as what the artists themselves are doing. But it's like a risk, like we're saying, I think, to try and translate someone else's work.
I think it's a very difficult risk. I think it's a huge risk, because you are daring to be capable of not just understanding what someone is doing and what they're about, but you're also daring to be authoritarian enough to your readers or your listeners to say, and this is why I think you need to care. You know, you have to buy into yourself in a way that is very scary. And for me, in the beginning of my career as a journalist, I didn't do it comfortably. I faked it. Now I do it very comfortably, because I'm an old queen and I can get away with it because I'm old. But you know, when I was in my 20s and 30s, particularly my 30s, you know, it was, and I was working for Billboard magazine, which was like one of the biggest magazines in the world, and I was trying to say, yeah, and this is why you need to care. And I would say that to my readers, but I would also say that to the artists, because I'm the guy between the two. Yikes. It's like basically covering yourself in honey and asking them to throw a match at you.
Don't you find? Because I would say, like, I don't think I've ever interviewed like an artist or band that I haven't like come away from it being like totally in love with them. Like, even if the interview is like a bit awkward, they don't have too much to say, or like whatever, by the time I've gone away and done the piece and like engaged with their work on that level, it's always genuine, because I'm always in a position of like serious like awe and admiration for like what they've done. So I'm never like trying to sell someone that I don't believe in, because even if it's not music that I would have listened to in my personal life outside of work before I happen to be interviewing them, like that's happened a few times, that there's people that maybe I've been like, oh yeah, they're like a really big US name, they're going to drive loads of traffic, I've never literally listened to anything that they do, I'm not interested, I'm not the target audience, and then I'll come away from it being like, they are just amazing, like I can't believe like, I just can't help it.
I'm the same way, because what I already now know you do, and now you've confirmed what I've gotten from just reading your work over the years, is, you know, if you're given an assignment, it's one thing to say, I nominate you because I think you're cool. But if you have an editor who says, well, this is a big name and you're going to talk to them, and you say, yeah, but, and they're like, well, find a way. you find something human, you search for the humanity, and in the humanity, then you understand the motive. And once you connect those two, there's a story there. Sometimes a story, I am very lucky to say that I was, very much a part of chronicling the first 4 years of Britney Spears' career. It was a broken vehicle before it hit the road. And that was the story. The story wasn't that she was a great talent. The story was, when is this going to crash? And then, of course, once it crashed, then I lost access. But anyway, that's a topic for another day.
I've always wondered this. This is why I love this thing. This is to Kathleen and you, Larry, is that so the opposite, the flip of that coin, I've always wanted to know on the artist side, having been at the receiving end of good reviews and really bad reviews too, whether it's live or records, is what do you think the writer's responsibility is? Ooh. Actually, I'm not going to give you an out there. I'm going to say, what do you think your responsibility is when you're faced with something you don't like, yet you have to write a piece about it? Because sometimes I say that's a genuine question, in the sense that I've read bad reviews of bands that I think are like needlessly snarky.
Oh, totally. Get joy out of that.
Yeah, and I've also read where I wouldn't even say negative, I'd say critical reviews, which give it a bad, that say basically that they don't like it, but at least it gives a reason. But then the thing I always struggle with even then is that at the end of all that critical thought, you have to go, and here's a number out of 10. Like, that always seemed ridiculous to me. But I'm not the kind, I don't sit here going like, you should only review things if you like it, because I do think there should be critical thought. But then, so I wonder from your perspective, how you would go about, or how you feel about writing about something that you don't necessarily like, knowing that the artist is probably going to see it. Whew, I got it out.
Yeah, that's such a hard question. I think it's like the defining question of a lot of journalists' like careers in this era, when the celebrity profile is such a different thing to what it was 20 years ago. The access that you get is so limited these days a lot of the time. Obviously, in the scenario of like a review of a gig, that is slightly different, but there is, who is your responsibility to greater, essentially? Like, do you have a responsibility to the artist, knowing that you don't need to be like say needlessly snide about someone's like really hard work just because you didn't like it, but equally you have a responsibility to your audience to like be truthful. I personally, and this isn't to say this is the right thing, because I think really like for rigorous journalism you do need criticism, like you say, but I don't like writing that kind of thing. I don't really do it. I think in the case of GQ particularly as well, as a title, they are a celebratory title. GQ doesn't tend to cover stuff that it doesn't recommend. It's not that kind of a publication. So I've kind of had an easy way out, like a free pass on that for the most part for the last like 4 or 5 years. I don't know. That said though, like you say, you don't want to be like pandering so much that your writing is obviously just like fawning over the person. And I definitely don't think it's necessarily the right thing to always have fans do the criticism, because you need someone slightly more objective. So I think you just got, for me, I think it's always, if you're going to criticize, it needs to come from a place that has meaningful, thoughtful, like you've engaged with their work on a level that is in itself coming from a place of respect. So even though you might not have the best things to say about it, and I think also you do want to steer clear, like, it's very easy for critics, I know a lot of artists feel like this, like to say like, oh, you could do this better, or you could do this better, or you could do this better. But it's like, okay, well, you try getting on a stage in front of 40,000 people. You could kind of thing. So I think it's being like sensitive in the same way that we all should aspire to be like online, how we engage with other people. Like most of us might go and complain to some, I don't know, like service on Twitter if it wasn't good. But it's not that often that you would go online and be like, just listen to so-and-so's album, I hated it. Like you might be like, oh, it was okay, but or a book. I don't know. I think it's actually quite a small percentage of people that go and share like a really negative, mean opinion somewhere in a public space, unfiltered. So I think it's just kind of taking a bit of that. And like with it was a few years ago now, but I know like when Helen Peterson, was it no, I've just got her name wrong. That's the woman from BuzzFeed. Helen, who did Lana Del Rey criticism and had done like a really thoughtful review of the album that was like thousands of words long, and Lana Del Rey was not happy about it because there were elements that were critical, like of maybe some of the themes or something like that. And actually, I think that is a microcosm of the broader situation, in that I can totally see why she would have like seen a few lines and been like offended, but actually like this was like the work of like a serious like admirer. Like she hadn't sat down for, you know, a week to write thousands of words about this album because she just wanted to be snide. Like she was meaningfully engaging with the work, and actually that is like I would say like a massive example of flattery.
I came up, well, I mean, I was a freelance journalist for many years. I'm a freelance journalist again. But for 14 years, I was an editor and a critic at Billboard. And the motto at Billboard was, there's no honor in tearing a new band apart. So if you think a record's not worthy of time or attention, you pass on it. And that the big names have to be grown up enough to take some criticism, but no axe grinding. All I want is to get as humanly close to a song as possible, and I'm not capable of creating it. So all I want to do is climb inside each one of you and have you tell me what it feels like. What's the humanity? What's the emotion? What's the spirituality? What's the anger? What's the rage? What's the pain? What's the joy? And then my job is to go out and tell the world. So we are running out of time. So we're going to bring this to a close with a feature that we like to call First and Last. And there's nothing better with a topic about why you listen to music than sharing the first song you listened to today and the last song you listened to before logging on.
Ooh. Love that.
Everybody pull their phones out. Who's ready? No, I mean, listen, I've got my streaming service. Others are all available. I use Spotify, and I could tell you what my first song was. So shall I begin? Let me begin. I was in a really good mood this morning, so I listened to Show Me Love by Robin S. and got my life with my coffee. And then I hit a rock in the ocean of depression, and I needed something that was going to help pull me out of it. And so I listened to the new Maneskin record, the new Maneskin single, the Italian band that won Eurovision. They just put out this insane record called Mamma Mia that basically addresses what happened at Eurovision, and it's also about blowjobs. And I just thought, okay, that's good. I'm into that. It's very punk, it's very glam rock, and I got into it, and I felt better.
I need to hear that song for sure.
Oh, it's great. I mean, it's him saying, I want to be on my knees.
Out of your depression.
So yeah, it started with house music, ended with punk. Who's next?
It's too early. I haven't listened to any music today.
All right, then give me the first song you listened to yesterday and the last song you listened to before you laid your weary head down.
The last thing I listened to yesterday, and this is kind of on topic for what we've been talking about, because, and I'd love to know how everyone else, how Abby and Jay feel about this, is I'm now reaching like, I'm going to say a little, like 3/4 of the way through knowing at least what this album's, and Jay, you were saying you're in the process of finishing stuff. That's where I'm at. And when I get to that stage, I'm actually looking for like where the gaps are in the record, whether it's like tempo or what haven't I said, or now I'm seeing it as an album rather than just a song and a song and a song. Point is, I've been listening to Until the Ribbon Breaks, right? Because I'm like, okay, what didn't work about that record and what was missing? And for me, that's not a nice experience because I zoom in on my own music and that's not an enjoyable experience for me. So that's what I've been halving to listen to until a rhythm breaks is my answer. I'd love to know if you have a better experience of hearing your own music.
All right. How about you? How about you, Kathleen? Are you ready?
Yes. So weird. I've had a bit of a weird kind of jump around with music today. In that, this morning, my first song that I listened to was Flowers, Sweet Female Attitude, because I was starting a little workout. I was like, I need to do some exercise desperately this Monday morning. And sometimes I need to make my own workout playlist, basically, because like whenever I try and go on the ones on Spotify, I'll be like, oh God, like, I don't know, there's just like a lot of like quite intense remixes, as I'm sure you all know. However, I have actually found like one random song in that list that I then listen to after that I actually like. It's like that, and I thought of him the other day because he did the what was it? Oh, why can I not think of the name? The massive like concert all over the world, the Global Citizen. That was it. That Alok guy, he's like a producer from like, I want to say somewhere in South America, can't remember. There's some kind of remix that's like the astronaut, what's it even called? Astronaut in the Ocean, something like that. That I actually quite like, that's come from my workout playlist. So yeah, there's that. And
you're talking about Masked Wolf. Masked Wolf.
Yes, that's it. There's an Alok
the Australian rapper.
Yes, but it's the Alok remix because it's like a gym, like it's a hardcore gym.
Yeah, I like him a lot, actually.
Okay. And then the last thing I listened to was actually, I don't really want to say this now because I don't know. I mean, he's not really like persona non grata anymore, but it was a Chris Brown song.
Oh, which one?
Yeah, Juice is the remix, like with like who's on it? Like Kanye and thingy, Andre 3000. Basically, I hadn't listened to it for ages, and then in keeping with what we were talking about with like music and memories, when I was away with my friends last week, I've come to realize that every time we're all together, like we literally listen to the same songs for the last 15 years. Like it'll be like the same songs. Like there'll always be like the whole of that like J-Lo remix album in there. And yeah, that was one of the ones that I'd been like begging them when we were like dancing around the villa last week. Like, please, can I listen to Juices? They're like, fine, you get your one song. So we've come up with a good system where every person gets a turn. And we don't wait for the phone for your song and your turn. It's democratic.
Fab. All right, Jay.
I listened to a Kendrick Lamar song this morning when I woke up. I've got like a vinyl of his Damn album, and sometimes I pull it on in the morning, and there's a song called Lust that just like, I think the lyric is like, wake up in the morning, something, and I'm just like, this is the one for the morning sometimes. So I played that, and then and just before I came on, I played a Cleo Soul song called 23 off her new album, Mother. And I love it. I just heard it on accident. I think, my Spotify just had it up, and I'm actually quite looking forward to listening to it again now.
Excellent. All right, Abby, bring it home.
Okay. So actually, when I woke up this morning, I mean, most mornings recently, I've been doing this thing where I wake up and listen to a crime podcast. It's so bleak. It sounds super like.
Which one? Which one?
It's called Case File. I'm obsessed.
Yeah. So you know,
good. This is he Australian? This Australian guy speaking at like 2 times speed about the wildest crimes, and I'm so into it. So that's what I woke up listening to. Soothed myself into the morning, and I will be honest. So before we jumped on this call, I was feeling tired, and I was like, I need to get hyped. So I listened to Meg Thee Stallion, Body Adi 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 Adi, and it worked.
Did you dance?
And I'm gonna re-listen to it later. Oh, of course I did. I was even doing like I found a karaoke instrumental to try and recreate in my room. This is what I was doing. I'm not even joking. Genuine.
Wait, I'm gonna wait. Let me pull up my Spotify. There's a song that you need to hear that I have a Spotify playlist back to back. It's called Walk. It's by some drag artist. What's her name?
And Abby, we gotta send each other some true crime podcasts because I got.
Oh, please.
Yeah.
Please. I'm so into it.
Oh my goodness. Well, okay. Well, I'm going to look for that song and tell you about it off air. But let me remind everybody to be part of the VERO Experience, where, like I said, all the freaks, geeks, and musicados gather to talk about all things music, all the things they love. My room got dark while we've been talking to sunset. Anyway, I want to thank Abby, Jay, and of course, Pete, Paul, Christine, Larry, Winfield, Newton, John for joining me today. And
Good job.
they're all, and Chris, and see, I want to call Kathleen Johnston is here. We're all on VERO, so find us and chat with us. We want to hear your thoughts about this conversation. Share some of your answers to the questions that we posed today using the hashtag Let's Talk Music. And of course, always look for the hashtag New Music Moves and share it yourself. What are your favorite songs? We will see you on VERO. I'm Larry Flick. We'll see you again next time.
You know what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.